Welcome! In today's lesson, we're going to be doing an IELTS Task 2 direct question essay. We're going to be writing this essay sentence by sentence to show you how to produce a Band 9 essay. Imagine you get a question like this. Children often complain that history lessons are boring because they are about a past that is dead. Now, typically you'll get an extra part like, to what extent do you agree or disagree? This is very common. I call these agree-disagree questions. Some people call them opinion essays. However, ever so often you'll get a question like this. How can schools bring history alive for pupils? So in this case, we need to suggest some ways schools can make history lessons more exciting. We're not weighing up whether history is dead or not. We're suggesting ways to make history classes more exciting. So this is an example of a direct question essay. They're uncommon, but it's important to study for them. Let me show you another example. In Britain, when someone gets old, they often go to live in a home with other old people where there are nurses to look after them. Sometimes the government has to pay for this care. Who do you think should pay for this care? The government or the family? Okay, this is the question that we're going to be writing our answer for. Now, a good idea is to start with the introduction. However, some people do leave the introduction to last. Practice both methods before you go to do your IELTS writing test. Now, when we write an introduction, we need to include two things. We need to introduce the topic and we need to respond to the question. So let's first introduce the topic. Now for that, we look at the question and the rubric, and then we change some of the words. I'll show you what I mean. As people in Britain reach old age. So notice I use this phrase, reach old age. In the question it says, gets old, and I change that to reach old age. These are synonym phrases. Many move into residential homes. So if we look at the question, we've got live in a home with other old people, and I change this to residential homes. It's all about changing the words, using synonyms and paraphrasings. As people in Britain reach old age, many move into residential homes where professional nurses provide round-the-clock support. Instead of saying nurses to look after them, I change this to professional nurses provide round-the-clock support. So round-the-clock support is a great phrase. It means 24-hour help from nurses. In the morning, at night, in the afternoon, any time of day, the nurses are there to provide help. Remember, there's going to be a PDF below this lesson where I'm going to teach you all of the vocabulary. So don't worry about taking notes. You'll find the PDF below. We've introduced the topic, but we also need to talk about who should pay for this care. So let's do that next. Since such care can be costly, now costly is a synonym for expensive, there is an ongoing debate. So we're suggesting that there's not a complete answer. It's an ongoing debate. There's still contention. There's still debate about whether the financial responsibility should fall on the government or on the individual's family. So this part answers the second part of the question. Who do you think should pay for this care, the government or the family? So we've introduced the topic with our two sentences. It's now time to respond to the question. Now this is where we explain our opinion. In my view, okay, very clear. We're showing the examiner that we are giving our own opinion on this topic. The state, so the state means the government. Remember, you'll get all of the vocabulary in the PDF. The state should bear the primary burden. So bear the primary burden means should be responsible for, it's a good synonym phrase, of funding elderly care. So of giving money for elderly care, funding, a very useful word for a lot of Task 2 essays. As this ensures fairness and equal access, regardless of a family's financial situation. So already in the introduction, we're suggesting the ideas that the examiner is going to read about when they read our body paragraphs. Let's move on to the body paragraphs now. So we're going to start with body paragraph 1, and this is where we're going to explain the side of the argument that we don't agree with. So with all body paragraphs, we're going to try and include 3 things. We're going to have a topic sentence, which is a short sentence at the beginning of the paragraph that explains what's in this paragraph. We're going to have a development where we explain a little bit more information, sometimes with examples. And then finally, we're going to have a link or a rebuttal. So for example, a link will take your idea and explain why it's relevant to the question, and a rebuttal will suggest that there's another viewpoint. Okay, I'll show you what I mean. Now we're going to start with the topic sentence, a short sentence to explain what the paragraph will include. One argument is that families themselves should shoulder the costs of elderly care. Shoulder the costs of elderly care is a great idiomatic phrase that means they should pay for elderly care. From this perspective, so we're relating it to this, we're giving the development here. From this perspective, adult children have a moral obligation. This is a great phrase, a moral obligation. Maybe there's a financial obligation, a political obligation. In this case, it's a moral obligation. So morally, this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to explain why. A moral obligation to look after the parents who once raised and supported them. So imagine when you're a child, your parents are looking after you, they're raising and supporting you. So it's only fair that when they get older, you look after them. You give them the same care back. Covering the expenses of a care home can be seen as a natural extension of this duty. So paying for a care home, a residential home, is natural extension of this duty. Now notice we've used the word home with other old people, which is in the question. We've used residential home, and now we've got care home. We've got different phrases that mean the same thing. This is what helps boost our score for lexical resource. Ensuring that the family remains directly responsible for the well-being of its older members. So the family is in charge, is responsible for providing a good quality of life for the elderly. Moreover, so this is a phrase that means in addition or furthermore. Moreover, advocates of this view, so advocates of this view means people who believe this. Now notice I use this phrase advocates of this view because I'm not saying this is what I believe, but I'm saying that this is an idea. This is something that other people believe, and this is a very useful phrase to use if it's something that you're going to rebuttal against. If it's an idea that you're going to say, well, yes, but here's a contrasting idea. And I'll show you a bit more about that in a second. Moreover, advocates of this view claim that if families are held accountable, so we've got a conditional here. If families are held accountable, government resources can be directed towards other pressing social needs. Okay, so government funds, instead of going to care homes and elderly people, can go to other things. Like what? Such as education or healthcare for younger generations. Such as is a great phrase because it's showing the examiner that we've got examples, and examples are great in our task 2 essays. Now we're going to include the link, or in this case, we're going to have a rebuttal. We're going to say why we don't fully support this view. Nevertheless, a great linking word that shows a contrast. Nevertheless, while this position highlights personal responsibility, it fails to address the inequalities that arise when some families cannot afford to pay. So now we're hinting at an opposing view, a view that we're going to develop more in body paragraph 2. So the examiner in this paragraph would expect to see what your opinion is, the side of the argument that you agree with. Now again, we're going to include the topic sentence, the development, and the link, and we're going to start with the topic sentence. A compelling reason why the government should pay for elderly care, so a compelling reason, a good reason, a compelling reason, great phrase, is that older citizens have already contributed to society through decades of taxation. Older citizens. We're not saying old people all the time. We're using different phrases. older citizens have already contributed to society through decades of taxation. Decade means 10 years, so decades, multiple 10 years of taxation, the money that you pay to the government through your income. Let's develop this idea further. For instance, examples are a great way to develop your ideas. For instance means for example. We've already seen such as, now we've got for instance. For instance, someone who has spent 40 years in the workforce, so spent 40 years working, will have consistently paid income tax and national insurance, which fund public services. We're showing topic-specific vocabulary: income tax, national insurance, public services. This is all high-level vocabulary related to this topic. It is therefore is a great linking word for developing ideas more, reasonable to expect that the state supports them when they are no longer able to care for themselves. It makes sense. Someone has spent all of their life paying taxes and giving this money to the government. When they finish work, they can't look after themselves. The government steps in and says, thank you for all of that taxation. All of the money that you've given us, we'll look after you now. A further justification means another idea, a further point, is that government funding guarantees equal access to professional support. So everybody gets the same type of professional support, regardless of a family's income. So it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, you receive the same type of support when you're elderly. A great thing to do here would be to give an example, a hypothetical. Without such funding, so without this kind of money, a retired teacher with modest savings, so a teacher who's got a little bit of savings, not a lot, might be forced into a lower quality facility, a care home that's not as advanced, while a wealthy business owner could afford premium care. We're saying, is it fair that a teacher who's worked all of their life would receive worse care when they retire compared to a business owner, yes, who has also worked hard? We finish with the link. By covering the costs centrally means by the state, by the government. We've got the state, the government, centrally. All of these good paraphrases. The government ensures fairness and dignity for all elderly people. Ensures is the same as make sure. It's a great vocabulary to use in your essays. So this is a very comprehensive second body paragraph. So far we've done the introduction, 2 body paragraphs. We can now move on to the final part, which is the conclusion. Make sure you give yourself enough time to write the conclusion. Now, our conclusion should consist of 2 things. We should restate our ideas, and then we should restate our position. Notice both of these phrases say restate. The idea with the conclusion is that we don't introduce anything new. So let's restate our ideas. In conclusion, this is the best way to start your conclusion because it shows the examiner that you have a conclusion. While some argue that families should take financial responsibility for elderly care as a matter of duty, this is our first idea, this approach risks creating deep inequalities. This was our rebuttal. In contrast, so now we're talking about what we included in body paragraph 2. Government funding both honors the contributions older people have made through their lives and guarantees equal access to high quality support. So again, this relates to what we were talking about with teachers and business people. Let's restate our position. For these reasons, I believe that the state is best placed to bear the primary burden of providing residential care for the elderly. Okay, so for the reasons that I've mentioned in this conclusion and in my essays, I believe this is what I think. So we've restated our ideas and we've restated our position. Now, have a look below this lesson. You're going to find quizzes and you're going to find a PDF as well. So good luck with all of your studying and make sure to practice some of these direct questions before you go to do your IELTS. Best of luck with all of your studies and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.